Hello everyone, thank you again for joining me. Now the topic of this video is before you judge, and I just had to release this video because it's a reaction really to what's happening in the world right now, where judgment seems to be everywhere, and it's led to the current crisis, and all the pain and tension and confusion all that is causing. Um, I can only use my own personal frame of reference, and what I'm going to say is opinion and not fact. As I constantly say, there are too many people at the moment who are presenting their opinions as facts. Before you judge, when you look at me, what do you see? Well, if you don't know me, you would have probably looked at my surname and saw Chung. I'm not Chinese, my husband is. Um, When you look at me, if you look at my bio, you'll see that I have a degree from King's College, Cambridge University. So you probably think privilege. I was born into a family of psychics and spiritualists, utter poverty. My mother was Dutch Indonesian and my father was disabled. I never left. My first time I went on a plane, I was age 30. I never had any money. I'm not trying to say I'm amazing here. All I'm saying is I struggled financially and emotionally, as my family was not a very happy one at the time. And I fought for that place at Cambridge. I left school at 16 with very few qualifications. My teachers told me that I shouldn't even consider university. And I loved English literature at the time, I remember, and it was a blow to me that I was put in the bottom set where you could only study, I think, 2 books, not the top set where you could study 6 books. I think they judged me on my background, my home background, which was alternative to say the least. So I lost all motivation at school, didn't bother with my exams, and left at 16. I was always drawn to the spiritual, considered my options, wanted to be a nun, and also this desire to help. I worked in a hospice where I had the privilege of caring for people in their final days, and that really started to inform many of my later books when I write about the possibility of an afterlife. But during that time, I still had a hunger for learning, and I just decided to home educate myself. Now, in those days, home education was so difficult to do. I remember I did it through an organisation called Wolsey Hall Oxford, and all the money I earned from my caring I had to use to pay for that. But all you got really was through the post as a recommendation of books and then some sample essays. So it really was me on my own. And these were the days before the internet, but I fell in love with learning. Um, Again, I was doing it on my own pace, and I got incredible results. I got triple A's at the time. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try my university dream. And I applied to several universities. They all rejected me because it was very difficult for me to get references at the time, given my alternative setup and given the fact that I was home educated. I couldn't tick the right box. And then just to hell with it, because I just thought I'm going to apply to King's College, Cambridge. I don't know why I did it. It was one of those moments of like, okay, nothing to lose. And would you believe it? They called me in for an interview. This is King's College, Cambridge, and I remember going there. I was terrified. It was pouring with rain at the time. I didn't have an umbrella, and I met the dean, and my hair was soaking wet. And I remember talking to him about my passion for at the time I was studying the Old Testament, and I I remember I was so passionate about it. I do have a photographic memory. I was literally quoting um, the book of Exodus and the book of Job because of problem of suffering, and I didn't know how it would go, and then I got an offer, and the rest is history. I went there, but what I'm saying is that this wasn't meant to happen. If you look at my family situation, my mother was an immigrant and my father was disabled and on the autistic spectrum, and we had no money, and I was not destined. It wasn't in the stars. If you would look at me, you wouldn't think that was someone who would end up at Cambridge University, but end up I did. So before you judge. And I also saw how my mother was treated at the time. This was the 1960s, 70s in Britain, because she could speak English, but her accent was very, very strong. So before you judge me, just wanted you to let you know a bit more about me. I'm not asking for sympathy or anything. I'm just saying before you judge, because at the moment the world is so full of judgment, people making assessments of people before they really get to know who they are. And if anything comes out of this crisis, I sincerely hope that before we rush to judgment, that we take time to get to know people from different cultures, from different belief systems. I really hope that we do that we open our mind and we try and understand different viewpoints. And that is what I love about the spiritual approach to life. And it's why I embraced universal spirituality rather than religion, is that universal spirituality takes into account all viewpoints. It just focuses on this interconnection, the fact that we all have beating hearts, we all bleed, we all dream. There is focus on what connects us rather than what separates us. I'm very, very fortunate to be in a position now that I can use my academic background and my ability to communicate spiritual truths, to write book after book. I feel tremendously blessed. I am so deeply grateful that literally for the last 15 years I have been doing 2 to 3 books a year. I've become something of a spiritual writer. I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that. But it hasn't just happened. I did work very hard to achieve that, because before I was an author in my own right, I was a ghostwriter for a lot of people actually in the New Age movement and whatever. I learnt as I went along the way. But the reason I'm talking about myself is I don't like talking about myself too much. I'm actually quite a private person, and I think there are far too many people in the New Age movement who it's all about me, me, me. I don't want to do that, which leads me to the second point of my video, really, which is about following spiritual teachers, leaders, gurus. I actually addressed this subject in my recent podcast, season 2 of White Shores, the final episode, the episode called What's Your Tipping Point? My whole season had been interviews with other people, but the final episode I decided to give my perspective on the spiritual movement right now. And I talked about all these spiritual healers, teachers, catalysts, gurus, blah, 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 out there, and how overwhelming it was, and how I felt that it wasn't what spirituality should be. I strongly feel that a spiritual perspective you can learn from is one that empowers you not to follow or copy anyone. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that people engage with what I say, but I never want you to follow or copy. I want you to find your own path to heaven, be your own guru, your own life coach, to adore yourself rather than to follow. I truly believe that Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, these amazing spiritual teachers, that the reason they are so amazing is because they were just themselves. They lived their authentic truth. To copy that, what does that say about you? You are a unique miracle of DNA. Why copy and follow? Be yourself. But of course you can get inspiration and new information and insights from other people. And I always feel so blessed when people say one of my books has changed their life or inspired them to have a different perspective. That's what it's all about for me. Inspired you to think about yourself and your life in a different, hopefully more healing way. That's all I can ask. But in terms of following and copying, I really hope that after people have read Teresa Chung's books, that they follow and copy nobody but themselves, and that they also judge nobody but themselves. The only person you should judge yourself by is the person you were yesterday. And the only person you should really be adoring is yourself, because you are amazing. And trust me, once you fall in love with yourself and really like the person you are, and there are ways to do that, and my books offer suggestions through rituals, through opening your mind to new beliefs. Once you do that, trust me, the rest falls into place. It can take a while. Learning to love yourself is the greatest journey of all. I'm going to go into song in a minute. It is. It takes time, and I think that's why we're here on this planet. I really do. we incarnate to learn to love ourselves and to value ourselves and to realize that we are enough without getting our validation outside ourselves. But I also believe we're here on this planet to not judge others, stop comparing ourselves with others. It doesn't matter what other people say or do. What matters is how you feel about yourself, what your values are. Did you do the next right thing? Are you a kind person? Are you a person who doesn't judge and sees a person not for their colour or their race or their culture or their belief or their status or their money or their looks, but sees their spirit, who they are? Because at the end of the day, we are judged, if we are ever judged on the other side, not by what we did, but who we are, the kind of person who we are. And you can actually define who you are by your daily actions, by your daily kindnesses towards yourself and others. I hope this has made some kind of sense, and I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your original thoughts and insights. So please do email me at angeltalk710@aol.com, and you can always get hold of me too at Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, my author pages. It is an enormous privilege to have this platform to talk to you about the spiritual approach to life, especially today, when the world, I believe, has never needed to hear a message of compassion, kindness and empathy as it has today. Sending you lots and lots of love.